All right. So, hey everybody, welcome to our 12th Wednesday webinar. I am Jen Paffenroth, the Business Support Manager at IEC Thermo. Thanks for joining us today. We have a really good episode lined up for you all on a topic that is extremely important in this industry as you're starting a business or thinking about your brand. And let's be honest, it can be really difficult to know where to start. So today we have some of our friends from Reckon Branding joining us. We have Andy, Heather, and Travis. Their presentation is awesome. I would suggest having a notepad handy today. They're going to provide a lot of actionable items for you as you think about your brand. So we will be taking questions at the end of today's webinar as usual. So if you think of a question throughout the presentation, just drop it in the Q&A section. It's at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will get to them at the end. So Andy, Heather, and Travis, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know you guys have put a lot of thought and expertise into this presentation, and I'm excited. So I will turn it over to you guys now.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for having us. We appreciate it. Yes, as Jen mentioned, we're going to have a lot of resources and actionable items you can be working with immediately following this. We will be sending out a PDF with links, so don't worry about writing down everything, but definitely any questions you have, do jot it down. Presentation we're showing today is we're talking about finding your brand's unique edge and hopefully helping you do that without spending a lot of money. As we mentioned, we're Reckon Branding. We are located in Atlanta, although we do have clients all over the US. We've been around for about 20 years. And we are a team of all creatives. So our clients, when they work with us, they have the benefit of working directly with the creatives that are working on their account. We are very passionate about helping smaller, mid-sized companies grow. If anything, we feel like we see the benefit of our advice and partnership with them. It's the old saying, it's like, you know, it's harder to shift a cruise ship than it is a speedboat. So it's fun for us to work with companies and to see the benefit. We're really big on making sure that the creative we produce actually works. That ensures that we'll stick around. It might look pretty and you may love it, but if it isn't providing results, then we're all going to go away unhappy. And we've just seen that in our space, there are a lot of big agencies who, you know, I appreciate their perspective. They're very proud of the work that they do. And that usually equates to it being very expensive. And unfortunately, that means that a lot of companies just are not able to afford their services. So we realize we all have finite budgets we have to work with. So we also realize, because the size that we are, as much as we love doing what we do, we're only able to help so many people. So that was really the genesis of this presentation. Is we wanted to share the information we've learned throughout our careers, discuss what are some of the best practices or common practices, I should say, that agencies use when they work with their clients to help them define their brand. So much like the masked magician you've seen on TV, we're going to be pulling back the curtain a little bit here today, showing some secrets, some tips that will hopefully help you as you move forward with your company. Specifically, when we're talking about hemp in this industry, we've become very interested and have been partnering up with some specialists. Heather had a friend and a connection, Matthew Clark of Think Happy Consulting, who I believe is listening in today. We've been working with him. And we feel like there's a unique opportunity here because, you know, there are a lot of brands and products and companies that have been in the space for a while. But there also are a lot of states and companies who are just getting into this. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to learn from what's been done. We also feel that, you know, for a long time, it was the kind of the first to market. If you were just first, then you were going to have success. And that's no longer the case anymore. You, being in the industry, now you have to differentiate yourself. Why you? And that's what we're going to really focus on today, kind of giving you some tips to help identify that. Often we have clients engage with us and they feel like they're doing everything right. They've read the books, they watch the videos, but they're just not moving forward like they think they should. They're not getting the results. And 99% of the time, that's because we find that they're selling what they do. They're really selling their category versus what they really need to be doing is selling why them. And I think starting to look at your business that way and your marketing and communications through that lens will help you quickly start to identify those opportunities to differentiate yourself from your competition. A good example of this, and I'll let Travis talk about this, is Tom's Shoes.
So, when we talk about a brand and a brand representing their why and not their what, I think Tom's is a great example of that. We all know that Tom's makes and markets shoes. But no one talks about Tom's as far as the quality of the fabric of the shoes or how fast you can run in them or anything else like that. They align with that brand because that brand is about a why and not a what. And so I think it's important for all of us, whatever category we're in or whatever industry we're in, to understand, aside from making money, why do we do what we do? And if your brand has a why that you share instead of a what, then you're going to have a competitive advantage against your competition, because if the only reason they're buying you is for a what, a price point or a fact or a feature, then it's going to be very easy for someone else to come in and swoop up that customer, because they don't really have an emotional reason for sticking with your brand.
And I think, we're at a unique place. Is the screen still working?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we're at a unique place where everything's kind of paused and it's starting to kick back up. But if there ever was a time to take a step back and reevaluate what's going on and have an opportunity to reposition your brand, this would really be it. So as we get ready to dig into this, the first thing we wanted to talk about is, what exactly is your brand? And I think commonly when people talk about a brand, they think about it being as your logo, your website, your social communications. And for us, we truly believe that that's not the case. Those actually, they visualize your brand. Getting to the core of what your brand is, that really is the experience they have when they work with your organization, they buy your product, they use your product. If you think about it, it's what they would say if they're at a party or at a networking event and they're referring you to a friend or a colleague. Very rarely, if ever, does someone refer a company because the way that their logo looks or what their website's like. We have a few examples we want to dig into a little bit that I think will help support that. Go for it, Travis.
Yeah. Sorry, we're still on the Tom screen from my perspective. Have you gone?
You also see the Tom screen?
Yeah. Are we having another technical snafu?
Man.
Yeah. Wow.
Can you see that?
Yeah. So the four examples of brands that I think, and now we're back to the black screen, Andy, of four brands that do a great job of being about a why instead of a what. Andy, maybe we just keep it on this viewpoint, so it doesn't. Are Apple, Tesla, Disney, and Harley Davidson. Now, there's a very good chance that if you're watching this right now, you maybe don't like one of these brands or all of these brands, and I don't know that those brands necessarily care, because the people who do care about these brands care very deeply and passionately. And the reason for that is all of these brands have done a great job of being about a why and not a what. Apple doesn't sell computers or devices. They sell creativity. Disney sells imagination. Tesla is, it's not a car, it's a lifestyle. And, Harley Davidson, though they clearly make motorcycles, what they really sell is rugged individuality. So by making all of these brands not about a thing, but about an idea, a concept, or a lifestyle, they've created these passionate advocates who would spend much, much more for the same thing in order to get the thing that aligns with their own belief set. So, this is why having a strong brand is so important, because it kind of makes you weatherproof. It makes you, whether someone else's price is lower or someone's feature might be better, if customers align with your brand on an emotional level, they're going to pick you even if they have to pay a little more.
I'm going to try this one more time. Do you see the 4 images again?
Yep.
Okay. I tried sharing it a different way. So do you see the Peloton?
There we go.
Yep.
Perfect.
That's good.
Okay. So as an example, we want to kind of dig into branding opportunities, and we wanted to use this case study. Obviously, everybody's pretty familiar with the Peloton bikes, probably for some negative press they got not too long ago. But I think a lot of us are at a place where, we're stuck at home and can't get to the gym. So maybe we want to look at buying a bike to bring home. So kind of walking through that experience. We go to the red, see the guy walking now? Perfect. Yep. Okay. So you were exposed to Peloton through some advertisement, whether it was digital, TV, print, and you're intrigued by it. So again, you're at a place where you're thinking about purchasing it. So you go to their website, see their logo, their tagline, their messaging, you get an idea what the bike is like, and it's pretty expensive. So you decide to go online and look at some of the reviews and see what people are saying, what are their comments. And you say, okay, well, it's expensive, but I think it might be worth it. So I'm going to see if the local showroom's open so I can go actually feel it, touch it, sit on it, see what it's about. I call the showroom. I speak with the representative there. They tell me that they are open. I go into the showroom. I talk with a salesperson. They give me a pricing sheet. I'm not going to buy right now, so I let them know I'm going to think about it. I get a follow-up email checking in with me to see how it's going. I then get a call. They call me from the showroom because I hadn't responded to the email. I let them know that, okay, I've done my due diligence. I'm ready to purchase the bike. So I get a link for scheduling the delivery of the product. The big box arrives. I assemble it. I sign up for the warranty. I then get a survey emailed to me, and then I sign up for the newsletter. Traditionally, a lot of people, if they were to identify where is the brand come into play, it's that first chunk there, where you see the website, you see the ad, the kind of the marketing communications. But in actuality, we really push our clients to think about this whole experience as your opportunity for a brand. And if anything, the traditional part thought of as a brand is a small part of this entire journey. And I think it's pretty easy to say that 11 different people or teams can manage this whole process. So if they're not aligned, they're going to have some groups fighting each other. So as you're thinking about your brand and making the best use of your marketing spend, you need to make sure that all the people who are part of those teams are working together and have the same goal. So as we mentioned, what we wanted to do today was talk about how a lot of agencies work with their clients to help unearth, define their brand. A lot of the common practices that they use are defining their brand essence, their archetype, identifying their positioning statement, and then delivering a style guide. This can get expensive. We're not going to lie. And honestly, there are agencies that specialize in each of these bullets. We realize that's just not realistic for most companies out there. So that's why we wanted to educate you on how this is done so you can look at your own brand with a different lens. And I'll let Travis talk a little bit about the essence.
So one of our favorite exercises to do is a brand essence exercise. It can be super fun. And it can also be a great way to let brand stakeholders get together in a room or on a Zoom and talk about what they think their brand is. And it's funny how many brands and many companies don't do this. So I'd highly recommend you get some stakeholders together to do this. And the way it works is you're going to get people who are important stakeholders together, and you're going to throw together a huge list of words and phrases that describe different aspects of your brand. your attributes. And an attribute is just anything that describes your company, your brand, or what the product that you make. The benefits. This is like, if you interact with our brand, what does it provide to you or allow you to do? The personality of the brand. So this stuff may have nothing to do with actually what you make or what you do. This is just like, we're bold, or we're nerdy, or we're funny. And all of those words are really important. Now we flip it and we start to talk about our audience. Why should they believe us? So what are the facts about our brand that we can prove that would sort of support some of these terms and these adjectives that we're putting together? What does it say about them? So if you choose our brand, what does it say about you? Does it say that you're smart? Does it say that you're cool? Does it say that you're technically minded? And then finally, maybe most important, how do we want our brand to make you feel? We've probably all heard that phrase that people aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you make them feel. So how do we want our brand to make people feel? And so we're just going to write all that down. Sorry about that, that's my phone. And we're going to write probably hundreds of different words and phrases. And as we do that, we start to see that there are kind of like these, I call them constellations, right? We might see a lot of stuff about bravery. We might see a lot of stuff about technology. We might see a lot of stuff about being fun or funny, whatever. And when we see those things, we start to realize, hey, those words and those sections are important. And we're looking for 3 words, usually adjectives, that define our brand essence. And it's also great when those words don't necessarily fit together perfectly, right? I wouldn't want it to be smart, technical, and intelligent, right? That's so clustered and so smooth. I like it when there are 3 words that exist slightly in tension, because what that means is we have an interesting brand. We're sort of defining something that's unique. So again, I highly recommend you get your team together and go through that exercise, and I think you'll find some really interesting things about your brand that you might not have known before. So the next thing we're going to talk about is your brand archetype. Understanding what your archetype is can help you understand how your brand behaves and how to connect with your audience on a subconscious level. So the theory of archetypes, Carl Jung is probably the most modern person who sort of clarified our understanding of archetypes, but for thousands of years, humans have understood certain characters that show up in drama, in literature, in movies, in the Bible, in mythology. And these characters exist across all cultures. So pretty much everybody above the age of 2 knows who these characters are, because they've seen them in their books, they've seen them on TV, they've seen them in Star Wars. So if you understand which of these archetype best represents your brand, and you kind of harness that, then you've basically created a shorthand for getting into consumers' minds. Because if they understand that, oh, this is a jester, and maybe they don't understand that consciously, but subconsciously they see, oh, this brand is a jester, or this brand is an outlaw, or this brand is a ruler, then they can kind of connect with you much, much faster than starting with like, well, I've never heard of this brand before. And so over many different connections and different contacts with this brand, I'm slowly going to understand them better. If you harness an archetype really well, they can understand you immediately. So we're not going to go into a ton of detail about all of these. This is usually a couple of hours that we might get together and talk about these. But there's lots of good resources online. You can learn about these archetypes. You can see that every one of them is somebody that you recognize and something. And we've picked a few characters that typify these archetypes, but we could have put hundreds of different ones there. So if you understand which of these archetypes best define your brand, then you can use them to harness them and to get into people's heads faster. The next thing we'll talk about is your brand positioning statement. Every big brand that works with an agency has these. And they're important because they are a foundation for all of your marketing messages. And as Andy showed earlier when we did that Peloton experience, your marketing message is bigger than you think about. So if you send somebody an email, that's a marketing message. If you talk to someone on the phone, that's a marketing message. And so every single step along the way, your logo, your website, your collateral, your digital, your social, all of this is part of your brand. And if it's all consistent, if it's all built on the same brand positioning, then your brand equity is going to increase every single time a potential customer is interacting with you. If it doesn't, then it's going to be kind of like different. And we've all had that experience with a brand where they said one thing on their website, but then I called them and it was completely different. You know, they were really warm and nice on the website. And then I called them and they were kind of rude and abrupt. And then I got an email and it was kind of funny, and none of this is lining up. So our brand positioning statement helps us make sure that we're consistent across every single one of those communication points. So what does a brand positioning statement look like? Again, I'm not going to get into too much depth here, but there's 4 parts of it. The first part is positioning our target audience. It's who we're talking to. So for example, of Crest, it's cavity concerned moms. For Jif, it's kids with choosy moms. For Tide, it's moms concerned with outdoor stains. So that's who we're talking to. Next is our frame of reference, which is talking about us. What is our link to that customer? So this is when we talk about our brand. So Amex is more prestigious than the other guys. Stovetop is the alternative to potatoes. State Farm is like a good neighbor. Then the point of difference, right? This is really defining how we are different from the other guys, from the competitors in our set. It gives us a reason for being. So that could be, we're the quicker picker-upper, or we bring you confidence, or the no-worry approach, or we satisfy your desire to be an individual, which is a funny thing to say about a soda, but that's how we have to think when we're thinking of brands. We're not thinking about our what, we're thinking about our why. And then finally is the support statement. Well, you know, why should I believe you here? And this is just answering the question that the customer might have and sort of giving them a reason to believe everything else that we've said. So a couple of examples here, and we've kind of color-coded it so you can understand we're talking about our audience, us, our difference, and our support. So for Coca-Cola, for individuals looking for high-quality beverages, Coca-Cola offers a wide range of the most refreshing options. Each creates a positive experience for customers when they enjoy a Coca-Cola brand drink. Unlike other beverage options, Coca-Cola products inspire happiness and make a positive difference in customers' lives, and the brand is intensely focused on the needs of consumers and customers. So that's the entire Coca-Cola company, not a specific beverage of theirs. But it is interesting that, you know, again, they're talking about stuff like making a positive difference in customers' lives, not about flavors or carbonation or refreshment or any of those things. They're really thinking of that higher level benefit. And I won't read apples aloud, but you can see that yourself. And again, this is a little tougher. One of the things we're going to offer anyone on this, if you want, you can reach out to us and we'd be happy to do a free half-hour consultation with you. This gets a little technical, so if this is one of the things you're interested in, we'd be happy to walk you through these steps a little more minutely if that would help.
And finally, one of the things that all agencies, branding agencies, should be doing is they do a lot of research. And that's understanding where's the opportunity for the brand to occupy a niche that's not being, a need that's not being met. What can we do better? What can we provide? What solutions can we give to our customers that they currently can't get? That's done by talking to your clients, talking to your key staff, your stakeholders, if you have partners, looking at your competitors, looking at their websites, looking at the materials. That's a great way to look at, help you look at yourself in a different way, is to go to the website and look at the materials of the competitors in your space and make sure that we're both not saying the same thing. So these steps that we've walked through, again, what we have found, and as Travis mentioned, what we do as well are like the core to helping define what a brand is. And then in the end, what you usually are given is a big bound book of here's your brand, here's your mission statement, your positioning statement, here's your essence, here's your color palettes, here's your logo treatment. And that's great, but the problem with that is it's static. So everything we've been talking about so far is about defining what's the perception, how do you, your team, and your customers see your company, where is the opportunity, where can we start to solve a need that's not being met, and then that creates everything that the foundation for what we do, and that's positioning. So that's the visual brand, that's the messaging, that's the tone, communication channels that we would want to explore. And the key is keeping all these aligned. because in any space, what happens is that potential changes. There's a new topic, a new technology, a new service that becomes the hot item that everybody's interested in. And if you don't manage and maintain your brand and keep it relevant and engage in those conversations, it's going to come across as very dated and stagnant. We realize this is a lot, and you know, we kind of fire hosed you, and you're probably sitting there going, okay, you know, I don't have time for this. I realize it's going to be expensive. It is going to take a lot of time typically to do this. And as we mentioned, it's going to be expensive. So what we're wanting to do is give you some exercises, some resources that you can apply right now. So we've tried to bring it down to these 4 simple steps that you can download, you can do on your own, you can lead your team through. It'll give you a real clarity as to what's going on. And by no means are we saying that this would replace what an agency can provide, but it will at least give you the right mindset of how to look at your brand and hopefully how to evaluate your brand moving forward. So the first document goes back to what we talked about, like with the Peloton. It's the brand journey. And so having this sheet and identifying the client that you're trying to engage with and what their journey would be. This is a little cheat sheet. You can describe them. You can talk about what you think motivates them. What are the things they're looking for? What are those criteria? And the boxes here, awareness over to advocacy, is the journey that they go through of just finding out that you're there. What do we need to do to get them to sign up or buy our product? How do we stay in front of them? How do we keep them aware about us? And hopefully one day they'll become an advocate for us. And actually, yeah, go ahead.
Andy, I just want to say, I think that this is a really important point to just for everyone on this Zoom, is that I think a lot of times we focus on acquisition, right? How do we get customers? How do we get new clients? How do we bring people in the door? But you don't get there if you haven't done the awareness and the validation first, right? It's very rare that somebody jumps into the pool before they dip their toe in. So if they don't know you exist, it's unlikely that you're going to get to that acquisition. And that important point, like, well, now I know you exist, so what's the validation? How are you winning me over? Then you get to acquisition, and a lot of times you think, all right, we won, we got it, but how do we continue to engage this customer? We've all heard that saying that your best customer is an existing customer, right? Like the best new business is old business. And then how do we retain them? How do we make that second, engagement with them, and the third? And then finally, this is maybe the top of the pyramid, which is advocacy. If you can turn that potential customer into an advocate for you, then they're being your marketer. Then they're going out and telling their friends, and that is huge. So if we forget any step along the way, I think we're doing our brand a disservice.
The bottom part of this sheet, the ownership, is you can write down who would be responsible for each of these steps or parts of the steps. And that will very quickly tell you who you need to have aligned and also who should be going through this process with you. Likely also, you're going to have more than one client or more than one customer. So as you start to talk about this with your team, you're probably going to identify that there's a few people that you need to keep top of mind as you move forward. So these will be great references moving forward. The next one is kind of like a cheat sheet getting to the archetype. We talked about that. But if you were to pick a spokesperson for your brand, who would that be and why? So we've put a good number here, kind of a wide variety of celebrities that can speak for your program. And then we've listed also a blank space if you have someone else that you think would be a good fit. And then ultimately, it's to get to those qualities about the person. What is it about them that made you pick that person? It's amazing how people will pick different individuals, but as you start to talk about them, it's the qualities that they possess, the way that they carry themselves, the kind of roles that they play that you start to associate your brand with. So it's a different way to talk about an archetype. The third step is getting into kind of the essence, but it's talking about your brand descriptors. And these are not good or bad. but these are either or. So as a brand, I can be conservative or progressive. I can be seasoned or youthful. I can be rational or excited. So we have the little key down here in the lower left. And so what we recommend you do is you write down your main competitors, and then you put your company for the star, and you go through and just chart them. It's not scientific, but it at least gets you starting to think this way. So you start to chart your competition, and you start to see that there are some gaps going on here. There are going to be some descriptors that just with your industry that you're going to want to be part of, and that's just the nature of your service or your product. But as you chart your company, you start to see, hey, you know what? Maybe we are a little bit more casual than most. Maybe we walk and act a little bit more humble. So you start to see how you can be authentic and unique to who you are and start to differentiate yourself from all the other noise that's going on. And then we do have a last column there on the right, because we realize there's probably going to be some descriptors that are going to be unique to your industry, so you can fill that in and put in your answers there as well. So taking this one step further, there's a second sheet to this where we ask you to identify those key, what do you really want to lean into? What's really going to differentiate yourself? So for this example, we say accessible and humble. And then you can mark those three as a kind of a summary cheat sheet, what we need to be aware of, identify where we think we are, and then you know where we need to be going. And then the last step is just to answer these three questions. And this is starting to get to the why, but just ask yourself and your key team members or stakeholders to answer in one sentence, what does your company do? Secondly, what do you feel you do better than any other? And last, besides making money, what is the reason your organization is in business? This will really get into the deep nature of what you feel your brand represents and really quickly start to identify how you feel you're different than your competition. And then, ultimately you want to look at everything and grade it. Again, it's not scientific, but it just gives you clarity and something that's benchmarks that you can work from. So how aligned are you? How consistent is the message in all of your marketing materials? Are you selling yourself or are you selling your industry? And all of your marketing materials, your website, your brochure, your sales collateral, are they supporting what you've identified as that unique point of who you are as a brand? And then we have just a very simple like buckets here you can look at, and you can kind of try and continue to work to move up and up and up. So as we mentioned, this is in no way meant to replace the value that a true agency can provide. But if you do this, if you go through these exercises and you share this with your team, I guarantee you're going to be far ahead than most of the people in your space, most of your competitors. When we send out the PDF, this link will be active, so you can download those documents and use them, print them out, share them with your team, and hopefully it'll give you the ammunition you need to go out and take on the world. As Travis did mention, as you mentioned, there will also be a link here in the PDF that you can click and schedule a half an hour session with us. Being completely transparent, like most people now, things are a little slower than they have been. So we're taking the opportunity now just to reach out and talk with people. We realize that if there ever was a time you've got to make the best use of your marketing spend, it's right now. So, we're a small agency. We love being a small agency. We're only going to be able to help so many. So we figure if we can share this information, help you grow. If you like what you see, maybe you can spread our name. But, we want to take advantage of this time right now to be as helpful as we can.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. So
Sure.
This is a great time. If you have any questions, type it in the Q&A section there. And, Andy, Heather, and Travis can answer them for you guys. So I will start with this one that we have here already. It says, is there a different approach to this for a small local nonprofit?
Well, it's interesting because first of all, at Reckon, we work with a lot of nonprofits and we work with small brands and regional brands. And, I think we've learned that the way our modern marketing world works is everybody competes with everybody, unfortunately, right? One of the things I tell brands in almost every industry is that your competition is Netflix, right? Because really your competition is there's so much information and so much noise out there that it's just hard to make a connection with people. So yes, even if you're a nonprofit and you don't technically have a competitor, right? You're still competing for eyeballs. You're still competing for attention. And, it is really important to have a very specific and salient brand. I sit on a board of a nonprofit, and one of the things I've helped them work through is that we still have to stand for something, and we still have to, when we have an opportunity, even more so because our budgets are so small, when we have an opportunity to connect with somebody, we have to be so clear and so consistent because it's going to be harder to get that second connection and that third connection. So we have to make the most of every one. So, I think the approach is a little different for smaller, brands or for nonprofit brands, but at the same time, we're swimming in the same ocean. And so we do need to use a lot of these same tools and apply them as best we can.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly when that question came through, but I think the resources we've shared, or that would be what we recommend as the first step for a smaller nonprofit. That's kind of without having to go through the long, timelines and hours it would do to execute those, what we call the common practices. Using those resources should give you the focus you need.
Great. Yeah, those are very helpful. And then kind of following up on those worksheets, Andrew said, you posted many worksheets. Which 3 should we focus on?
I would say, so the last section there where we had kind of the 4 steps. So there was the client journey. Let me see if I can share my screen again. So I think, do y'all see this, the brand journey?
Yep, you're good, Andy.
I think this is critical, really understanding who you're talking to, because often business owners make the mistake of talking to themselves or talking to their team members versus thinking about their customer. I would say this, if I had to pick the next most critical, it probably would be this, to make sure that you're creating a voice that's unique in your space. And then probably answering this sheet would probably be the next. The spokesperson, it's a fun exercise to go through with your team. It really helps just clarify how everybody sees the brand, and then it helps you then know what you need to do to get everybody aligned.
Yeah, definitely. All really good exercises, but those 3 seem very important. Awesome, thank you. And then we have another question. How many online channels should a small company associate with?
I'll take a stab at that. And I don't know that there is a magic number, but I will certainly say this. There's nothing more disheartening, or nothing will make a potential customer think you're not reputable than to go on one of your social media sites and see you haven't posted in a year and a half. So I think the first thing you have to recognize is, if you're going to do it, do it. One of the things I always do when I visit a company's website is I go to those social bugs and I click them. And it's amazing how often you'll go through to their YouTube channel, which they've decided to have and market on their website. And then you see that they posted 1 video 3 years ago. So just imagine, a potential customer going through that process and seeing that. Like, what are they going to think? Similarly, if you maintain a Facebook profile and you don't post there regularly and you don't put very good content there, I would almost say you're better off not doing it than doing it half-hearted. So the first thing is, I think you have to take a very real look at your resources internally and decide if it's worth doing or not. And I hate to say it, but I'd rather you not do it than do it poorly.
Yeah.
So if that means you can maintain one social media site, and maybe that's Instagram, and do it well, then do it. That's the first thing. And you know, and the second thing too is, you know, how can you harness your internal resources better? You know, one of the things that's kind of nice about, I mean, there's, you know, obviously some issues with Facebook right now, but everybody knows how to use Facebook. Every one of your employees, every one of your internal stakeholders, you know, they all know how to use it. So instead of having a social media department that's one person in the corner, maybe everybody can have some voice on social media and sort of magnify your impact there. So I don't know if that exactly answers the question, or maybe I didn't get the question completely, but I would definitely say that, like, be focused online. And if you can do it well on 3, 4, 5 social media platforms and it makes sense, then go for it. But again, it's better to do one right than to do 5 poorly.
Yeah, just to follow that up, I think also to help clarify maybe which one, if you do have limited bandwidth, is, you know, going back to identifying your customer's journey. Likely, if you're a small business, even a mid-sized business, you know, like you have that one client, that's your ideal client. If you could have 1,000 of those, that you'd love to have 1,000 of Sarahs or 1,000 of Toms. Think about their life. Like, what do they really, are they really into Instagram? Are they really into LinkedIn? That will help you kind of identify which one to go after first.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Knowing who your customer is. Great. Okay, moving on. So this question is, my company is a small chain of retail stores with an e-commerce site. Brand is called Natural Life. We specialize in selling CBD, and we currently offer franchise opportunities. When one Googles Natural Life franchise, Natural Life CBD, etc., we come up on the first page and close to the top every time. But when one just Googles Natural Life, we are nowhere to be found, even after clicking through the first 10 pages.
Wow.
What can I do to have better SEO for my brand when only the brand name is typed in Google versus anything more specific? I understand our brand name is a very general phrase, and maybe this is extremely difficult, but I do see other brands coming up, which makes me wonder, what are they doing that I could also be doing? It's a long one.
Well, there's a really interesting and thrilling and terrifying approach in our creative world called creative destruction. The first thing you got to do is say, do we change the name? And I know that's probably a gut-wrenching thought, but you know, when we go through naming processes with clients, one of the things we talk about is you got to be able to own it, right? And sometimes something that is a relatively generic description in our modern world, where everything runs via search engine, can be tough, right? And we've had plenty of clients that they're this way. Their brand name was also, you know, relatively straightforward and descriptive. And so we were competing not just with people in our field, but we were competing with just people looking for natural life remedies, or I want to live a natural life, right? And so suddenly your competition is way bigger than you thought, and so you lack that ownability. Now, that may be very scary, but there's also search engine optimization things you can do, and you can also do paid search where, you know, if they're looking for CBD or CBD oil or certain phrases, you know, you can buy that search for pennies on the view. So that may not be a reality for you to spend money, but you can actually do search engine marketing for relatively cheap, where you actually are competing with specific terms that describe your category, not just your brand name. Because we're assuming that they know your brand name too, right? Like, you know, there's probably more people looking for your products who don't yet know your brand,
right,
than people who know your brand. And it's definitely scary to think that they know my brand and still can't find it. But yes, some owning that search term can certainly help.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, yeah, you're going to have a lot more people you can reach and sell your product to who don't know who you are. So think about SEO from that perspective versus them seeking out your brand name. And this is a deep question, and we're not pretending to be SEO specialists, but we do have people we can connect you with So by all means, if that didn't give you enough, please email me directly and I can put you in contact with some SEO firms that can answer that a little bit better than we can.
Awesome, thank you guys. All right, we'll move on to the next one. We have quite a few here, so we'll keep plowing through. Would this same formula apply to someone starting their own consulting firm as a sole proprietorship?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because Sherry, another question down, asks a very similar question, I think, which is, if you are a sole proprietor or if you are the business, how can you do these things in a meaningful way? Because everything is coming for you. And I really do think it's important to bring in other perspectives. So if you have a champion, if you have an important customer, if you have someone who knows you, if you have just anybody else who would care, I think it's important to bring them in because, first of all, other people are going to have perceptions of you that you may not know about. And they're probably good perceptions, right? But either because you're humble or maybe because you have a certain understanding of what you do that other people see it in a different way, I think it's really important to try to get other perspectives in there. Now, having said that, I do think it's very important that you have a North Star and that you have an aspirational brand that you're moving toward. But, you know, the risk of only having one point of view in this is that you just miss out on some perception that's out there that you're not aware of. So we definitely think it's important to try to bring in other voices, other stakeholders, even if it's customers or existing clients or somebody who has a perception of what you do and what your brand could be. So it doesn't just end up being only your perception or only you, because, you know, your brand is more than you. And it should be more than you. Maybe someday you're going to sell this brand. Maybe someday you're going to hire new people to be part of this brand. And so if you were the only stakeholder in that brand up to this point, it's going to be really hard to hand it off to somebody else.
Yeah, you kind of stole what I was about to say. I think you might be starting off on your own, but you may have a goal to have partners or a team, and who you are as an organization now should be the same, whether you're one person or 10. And so I think going through this process, and that's great, do exactly what Travis said, talk to people who know you, because it's not you, it's what makes you that pushes them to want to work with you.
Yeah, great point, because otherwise, like Sherry said, you can easily stay in your own head when you're doing those exercises.
For
so
sure.
Yeah.
Great points. All right, next question. If a company is focused on wholesale, is your customer the businesses you sell to or the ultimate consumer of the product?
So we've done quite a bit of work in consumer packaged goods, and that's one of those worlds where you have a customer and a consumer, right? And those, you know, that sound like we're saying the same thing twice, but we're not. And, you know, Andy earlier talked about how when you figure out who your audience is, it's probably not one audience, right? So I do think probably your most important audience is your customer as a wholesaler, but there's a very good likelihood that you should also create a completely different profile for your consumer, because at the end of the day, there is this sort of trickle down to the brand, and your customer needs to know that you have your consumer in mind as well, because your consumer is your customer's customer, and that's the most important thing to them. So we've seen a lot of success when our customers do a good job at showing their customers that they care about their consumers. And now I'm confused. But yeah, so definitely, I do think that your customer is probably more important than their consumers. But one of the ways you reach them is by showing that you think about their customers.
Yes.
And that you take them into your branding, and it's all part of that big picture. And who knows, maybe someday, you know, without getting marketing myopic, you may be marketing to those consumers too.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. All right, moving on. We work in the hemp industry with a lot of noise, misunderstandings, and misrepresentations. My sense is clarity and quality is long overdue to bring differentiation to our brand. Are videos more effective than print material in achieving this differentiation?
I got this one. Yes. Next question.
Next. Well, it's hard to say that, but video brings together visual storytelling, audio storytelling, and storytelling over time. Nothing touches the effectiveness of video storytelling. We know that it can be more expensive. We know it's harder, but it's worth remembering, when Andy and I started in this business and you made a video, the starting point was $100,000, right? Like that was a cheap video. Nowadays, we're bringing out our iPhone and we're going out in the backyard and we're making videos, and people are used to seeing that. Now, I'm not saying make terrible videos, but I am saying that the entry point to making videos has lowered a lot. And, again, I don't want you putting bad stuff out there, but I definitely think that if you can harness video and you can make that worthwhile and make your budgets work, then you definitely should.
Yeah, depending on who you listen to, YouTube is either the second or third most searched resource online, obviously behind Google. It's amazing how many people will just go to YouTube and type in they're looking for the product or the service or whatever. Now, if the kind of understanding when they say print, I don't know if they mean physically like a magazine ad or collateral versus web.
Wait, sorry, real quick. What's a magazine?
Yeah, I know.
I've heard of it.
I think the beauty of video is it versus print is video will live on forever. It is indexed. It is searched. People will watch a 3-minute video way more often than they'll sit down and read an article.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning that YouTube has more daily users than Facebook. It's the biggest there is.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I believe it. All right. We're getting down to the end of the question. So if you still have a question, we have time for maybe a couple more. What are the most effective strategies to stay relevant in the space?
We would probably each have a different answer, but for me, I would go back to the very beginning of this presentation and say, understanding your why. Why do you exist other than making money? Why are you here? You're not the thing that you make or the service you provide. You have a why, and it's something that people might get excited about. Particularly when we look at millennials and Gen Z coming in behind them, they are choosing brands that align not with their needs, but with their beliefs. So if the reason you do what you do is to show the world the beauty of hemp, or to change the way we think about whatever, like showing that you have something that you're passionate about and you care about is going to make you relevant. Now, of course, you have to do a good job telling that story, and you have to be able to do it in an iterative way, right? You can't do it once and then step away and think you're going to be relevant. But I think in our modern marketing environment, relevance starts with your why. And if you don't have a why, you are only a price point or a widget. So figure out what your why is, really believe in it, don't make it up, but ask yourself that question. Aside from making money, why do we do what we do? You have to be able to answer that question, and then be willing to tell people about it. That's not, it's not cheesy, it's not cheap, and it's not missing the point, right? It's actually what people care about today, your why.
Yeah, I think another thought on that and staying relevant is just being engaged. If I found a snake in my house and I had to get it out of the house, and I went to look online, and there's one company that it looks like their website was done 10 years ago. It looks like an online brochure. There's no videos. There's nothing in there. There's another company, and they have videos. Video starts playing on the homepage. I can tell that they have new blogs, and the prices are exactly the same. I'm going to pick the one who is obviously active and engaged in their space. So as much as it is, I completely agree with Travis, it's like understanding your why, but you have to stay relevant and engaging in these conversations that are going on in your industry. And people will see that then, wow, they really are passionate about what they're doing. That's who I'd want to give my money to. That's who I'd want to partner with.
Yeah, definitely. Makes perfect sense. And then, so kind of actually going off of that, so not only being engaged, but then how can we get more engagement on social media? We repost and post organic content, ask questions, etc. But it's like pulling teeth to get any comments. How do you recommend getting more of a connection and discussion with our followers? Really good question.
Well, I think the first step is being willing to do some paid social. Facebook is another place where you can spend pennies to get engagement. There's a very good likelihood that a lot depends on how many followers you have currently, but first of all, keep in mind that every time you post something on social, a minority of your followers see it. That's just the way Facebook's algorithm goes. So if you have a relatively small amount of followers, most of them don't see it. And, it doesn't kind of get that critical mass to get people like commenting and talking about it. So think about reaching out to people who have not yet engaged with your brand and letting them know about your brand on Facebook. It's so much fun to get into Facebook's ad platform and look at how you can target people. You can target by zip code. You can target by the TV shows they like. You can target by hobbies. So there's a really good chance that you can really fine tune a message to somebody who's going to care about your brand by getting there and doing a little bit of paid. I in some of my nonprofit things, I've done like $20 ad campaigns on Facebook and reached hundreds and hundreds of people who are very, very specifically targeted. So it can be a pretty good investment to reach people that you want to talk to and want to engage with your brand. And maybe that can kind of help because you kind of got to get a critical mass of followers before that stuff is going to start ticking. And then, of course, what you put up there is going to be part of it, too. You have to be evocative and interesting.
That's exactly what I was going to get into. Obviously, without looking at your social messaging, there's this balance of frequency, and you don't want to become white noise. And if you're being socially active just to be socially active, people aren't going to see necessarily value when they see something pop up from your brand in the thread. So I would encourage you to really take an honest look at what you're sharing and what you're talking about. Because, I don't know how many times I go to brands and they're posting about, events and holidays and things that just have nothing to do with their space, and they're doing it daily or a few times a day. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like no wonder people aren't paying attention to what you're saying, because there's just no value. I'm not going to want to listen or seek out your content. Now, again, I'm making some assumption. I don't know, but I would look at what are you talking about? Is there value in what I'm sharing? And if it's, again, what you're saying is what your competitors would say or many in your space would say, then you might want to think about looking at a focus on what you're communicating and making sure it's going to be relevant.
Yeah.
Hashtag relevancy.
And perfect segue, hashtags. How do you feel about them? Are they worth all the hype?
I think it's probably worth just going back and redefining what a hashtag is, right?
Yeah.
Hashtag makes your content more searchable. So if someone is looking for puppies eating cookies and you have hashtag puppies eating cookies in your tweet or in your content, it's going to be easier for them to find it. But keep in mind, they have to be looking for that. So I see sometimes, and I think they're just making jokes, someone will hashtag something like tall bird wearing a hat, right? So the only way that hashtag is effective if someone is searching for tall bird wearing a hat. So keep in mind that either if you're creating a hashtag, you're hoping to start a movement, right? So maybe it's CBD for life, right? And maybe if that's a hashtag that you try to start and you're trying to get people on board, then maybe that is worthwhile. If you're just throwing out crazy hashtags thinking, oh, maybe if I put hashtag short-nosed dogs, then that's going to bring a lot of attention to my content. The odds are it's not. It's only if people are looking for that are they going to find it. So just keep that in mind. If you think there is something that is relevant to your brand that people are looking for on social, then hashtag it in your content. If not, it just, know that it's maybe a joke or a little punchline, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
But, if you're just covering your posts with hashtags that no one is ever looking for, I think it's the equivalent of garbage at the bottom of your post.
Yeah. I think another way to, who here has used a hashtag recently searching for content? I personally haven't.
Once in a blue moon, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're great for if you're at an event and you're trying to find communication going on about that conference or, whatever the topic is. I see a lot of value there. And kind of like adding flavor, adding hashtags that obviously have nothing to do with someone searching it, but it just gives another level of who you are as a brand and the tone you want to possess.
Yeah, that's great. Good to know. Good. Well, that was the last question. We got through all of them. Thank you to all of our attendees for asking such good questions. And Andy, Heather, and Travis, thank you guys so much for joining us today. It's so obvious that you guys have put so much thought into these exercises, and the best part about it is that they're fun, right? They're fun to do, they're fun to go through. So really appreciate that. Really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing all this valuable information with everyone. We will have, or in the follow-up email, I will have that PDF that they talked about and their contact info. So, feel free to reach out to them, keep the conversation going. So, yeah, that's that. And then next week, we will actually wrap up our Wednesday webinar series with an episode called Show Me the Money. So we will discuss ways in which to finance your existing or future hemp operations with expertise and input from specialists in leasing, financing, grants, marketplace, commodity pricing, and business plan development. So if you haven't seen any of our other webinars yet, check them out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, IEC Thermo. Lots of great content on there with a wide variety of topics that cover different parts of the hemp industry. So thank you guys so much. Any last words from you guys?
Those are awesome questions. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Thanks. No, I appreciate the opportunity to share this with your audience. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, so glad you could be here, and we hope everybody else has a great week, and hope to see you guys next week at our last webinar.